Hello, my name is Shabnam. My first subject is session hijacking. Today I will talk about session hijacking, which is a common network and web application attack. Session hijacking allows an attacker to take control of a user's active session after that the user has already logged in. Instead of breaking authentication, the attacker exploits weaknesses in session management. This makes the attack very dangerous because it bypasses the login process entirely, and it can occur without the user knowing it's happening. What is session hijacking? When users log into a website, the server creates a session identifier for them. It also is called a session ID. This ID is stored in the browser, usually inside a cookie. Because the HTTP protocol is stateless, the session ID is necessary to keep the user authenticated while the user is moving between pages. So if an attacker steals or predicts the session ID, they can impersonate the user and access all authorized resources without knowing the username or password. There are different types of session hijacking. There is active hijacking, passive hijacking, and there's a hybrid technique that I'm going to explain in the next slide. In active session hijacking, the attacker disrupts the victim's connection, often using denial of service techniques, and then takes the control over the session. But in passive session hijacking, the attacker doesn't interrupt the session. Instead, they monitor on an encrypted traffic and capture the session ID, and later on they reuse it. Passive attacks are more difficult to detect because the victim usually doesn't notice the abnormal behavior that is done. In the hybrid technique, the attackers use techniques that combine both active and passive methods. For example, in blind spoofing, the attacker cannot see the traffic but tries to guess the sequence of numbers. In the non-blind spoofing, the attacker directly monitors traffic and injects packets. Another very common technique is cross-site scripting or XSS. In this case, the attackers inject malicious script into vulnerable websites. When users load the page, the script steals session cookies and sends them to the attacker. Common techniques are XSS session hijacking, session fixation, TCP/IP hijacking, and there are some tools that I'm going to explain now. Session fixation is another technique where the attacker forces the victim to use the predefined session ID. After the victim logs in, the attacker continues to use the same session. There are tools like Wireshark to sniff network traffic, while some other tool like Websuit is commonly used to intercept, modify, and replace session cookies. Although these tools are designed for testing, they are misused when security is weak. The consequences of these attacks are account takeover, financial loss, and loss of trust. In detail, once a session is hijacked, attackers can perform any action available to the victim, like changing the password, making purchases, or accessing confidential data, like the card details. This will lead to financial damage and loss of user trust. Ways of prevention of session hijacking is using HTTPS protocol and secure cookies, session regeneration, IDS, and MFA. Session hijacking can be prevented using the HTTPS protocol, secure cookies, and regenerating session IDs after the login. Intrusion detection systems and multi-factor authentication also reduce the risk of successful attacks. For the detection, there are different detection methods, like in monitoring abnormal behavior, like changes in the signal strength or response time in wireless networks. These measures significantly reduce the risk of session hijacking.